interest in our organization. Your presence in this hall is a testimony to the faith of those who founded UNESCO that real and lasting peace must be based on the development of education, science and culture throughout the world. I should like to recall what you said at New Delhi 6 years ago in 1956, when you addressed the sixth session of the General Conference. You said, "Man does not live by politics alone, nor indeed wholly by economics." And so UNESCO came to represent something that was vital to human existence and progress. Even as the United Nations General Assembly represented the political will of the world community, UNESCO tried to represent the finer and deeper sides of human life, and indeed might be said to represent the conscience of the world community. This appreciation of the organization's role has been a constant source of encouragement and inspiration for all those of us who have the honor to serve it. I cannot on this occasion give an account of the unfailing and fruitful cooperation between India and UNESCO, but I feel that I must recall a few outstanding examples. In the field of education, it was India that acted as host to 2 regional meetings of Asian states that served to highlight the problems of educational development in Asia, and that prepared the way for the UNESCO meeting in Karachi in 1960, which established working plans to ensure free primary education for all children in Asia by 1980. The achievement of this goal and of similar goals of other levels of education depends essentially on the countries themselves. UNESCO can, does, I think, and will help. But of course the major burden falls on the member states directly concerned. And it is therefore extremely gratifying to note that under India's third 5-year plan, your government has committed itself to increasing the number of children attending primary school from 41 million in 1961 to 65 million in 1965-66. The whole world can measure the significance of this extraordinary effort as a leap forward in the social and economic development of this great country of yours, and also as an example of what can be done if the will and the skill are matched. It is here that the Regional Center for the Training of Educational Planners, Administrators and Supervisors that has been established in New Delhi will have such great importance in enabling all the countries of Asia to train the men and the women they need to work out and implement their plans. UNESCO is pledged to give its full support to this center in the crucial years ahead. In the field of the sciences, the human and financial investment that India is making to develop basic research, to train scientists and teachers of science, and to apply the results of scientific research to the promotion of human welfare is again an example for all countries. I am glad that in response to requests from your government, UNESCO is able, through the resources of the expanded program of technical assistance and of the United Nations Special Fund, to bring to you technical and financial assistance from the international community of nations. But in our modern world, education and science, if they are to be developed for all and brought into the service of all, will not suffice. to create the peace which the peoples of the world demand. There must also be a mutual understanding and appreciation of the cultural values by which peoples live, and this is especially necessary as between the peoples of the Orient and of the Occident. It was symbolic that the 10-year major project to develop this mutual appreciation was adopted by the UNESCO General Conference at its session in New Delhi in 1956, and it is not surprising that India should be making such a distinctive contribution to the achievement of the purposes of the project. This cooperation between India and UNESCO has been continually confirmed by the contribution made to its work by the succession of distinguished Indian men and women elected by the General Conference to serve as members of the organization's executive board, among whom I will especially name the philosopher and the educator who are today the President and Vice President of your country, Sri Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan and Dr. Zakir Hussain, and the present member, your own daughter, sir, whom we are all so glad to see here at your side. This is ample proof that India is giving to us its very best. May I conclude, sir, by addressing a few words, more particularly to you, not so much as the Prime Minister of one of UNESCO's most important and most devoted member states, but as a man to whom we pay homage as one of the intellectual and moral leaders of our age. On the eve of India's recovery of independence, on August 14, 1947, you told your countrymen in Parliament, a moment comes which comes rarely in history, when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. It is fitting that at this solemn moment we take a pledge of dedication to the service of India and her people and to the still larger cause of humanity. It is because since then you have constantly endeavored to serve alike and at the same time the cause and interest of India and the still larger cause of humanity that we may dare to call you great. For among the statesmen of the world, you have achieved this distinction of remaining what you always were, an example, a guide, and an inspiration for all those everywhere who care above everything for the dignity of man. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing to you our distinguished guest, the Prime Minister of India, Sri Jawaharlal Nehru.
Mr. Director General, Excellencies and distinguished delegates, I am deeply grateful to you, sir, for your invitation to me to address this distinguished assembly and for your kind words which you have just uttered. You have spoken of our efforts in India to better the lot of the hundreds of millions of our people. That is true. We are trying our utmost to catch up with the age and at the same time to retain something which has been with India for a long time past. Her particular individuality, her particular search for human betterment in many ways. In that work, we have been helped by UNESCO, and I offer my thanks to you and your great organization. I do believe, as I said, and you have been good enough to quote me 6 years ago at a meeting of UNESCO in Delhi, that the UNESCO represents something very vital in the world today. And while the United Nations is grappling with difficult problems on the political plane, UNESCO goes deeper down into the minds and hearts of men and directs them to more fundamental things which perhaps ultimately govern even politics and economics. In the preamble of the UNESCO Charter, it is said that since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that defences of peace must be constructed. The main object of the United Nations and of UNESCO is to put an end to wars and establish a peaceful world. Even in a peaceful world, conflicts of opinion may take place as well as other tensions. But the question is whether those conflicts and tensions can be resolved in a peaceful manner without resulting in violent conflict. If there is a way to resolve them peacefully, then why should we not try that method now to resolve the tensions and conflicts of the present-day world? The UNESCO preamble rightly referred to the minds of men which give rise to wars and other conflicts. It is then the minds and the hearts of men that have to be approached for mutual understanding, knowledge, and appreciation of each other, and through the proper kind of education. That is essential. But we have seen that education by itself does not necessarily lead to a conversion of minds towards peaceful purposes. Something more is necessary: new standards, new values, and perhaps a kind of spiritual background and a feeling of commonness of mankind. That commonness of humanity is already being brought about by technological progress, but the minds of men have not grasped it or kept pace with technological progress. So we see that science and technology, which have brought so many benefits to the world and gradually tend to go towards the formation of one world, are also used for the manufacture of terrible weapons of mass destruction. At the base of it all lie fear and hatred. How then can we get rid of this fear and hatred and use modern scientific progress in the cause of peace and tolerance? The world is full of variety, and that is good, for if there was a dead uniformity, it would be a poor world to live in. But variety does not mean that we should interfere with others and try to impose our will upon them. We must recognize the right of other people to live their own life and to be tolerant of differences and of those who do not agree with them. the world is changing rapidly, but our minds often remain in the same ruts, even though the old context has changed. There is a great conflict today between the capitalist structure of society and the communist. Yet every thinker knows that capitalism has changed its face. In every way, and is continually changing. So also communism is developing in new directions. In a sense, it may be said that there is a certain lessening of the gap between the two. But even so, the old slogans continue to befog our minds and produce fear and hatred. How can we get out of these ruts of thought and look at the world without prejudice and fear? During the terrible days of the last World War, our great leader, Mr. Gandhi, said, "Let us look at the world with clear eyes and not with bloodshot eyes." It is difficult to do so when we are filled with passions and prejudices, and even more difficult when fear oppresses us, for fear is a bad companion. Strenuous efforts are being made to bring about disarmament all over the world, and there is no greater need today than that of disarmament. If we succeed in that, these fears will undoubtedly lessen and enable us to think straight and more clearly. But disarmament itself will come when these fears are less. How then are we to get out of this vicious circle? Perhaps step by step we may advance towards our goal, each step creating conditions for the next step. We in India do not pretend to know the answer to these questions, and we do not presume to tell others what they should do. But men of my generation in India have had a unique experience. We achieved our freedom, the freedom of a great and militarily weak country against a powerful empire by peaceful methods and without shedding blood. That was a unique example in human history, and it was largely due to the leadership and example of Gandhi. Perhaps also to something deep in the spirit of India which fitted in with Gandhi's teaching. In the main, that teaching was always to think of the means and not merely of the ends. For means fashion the end. If the means are right, then the ends will also be right and will not have evil consequences trailing behind them. We did not fully understand our leader, Mr. Gandhi. We could not do all that he told us to do, but we have felt the warm glow of his presence and have had the joy of working under his leadership for a great cause through methods and means that seemed to us to be right. We were trained to cast off fear and hatred and to wish ill to none. We did not come up to his expectations. We were ordinary mortals trying to live up to the ideals he placed before us, and we failed often. But the change he wrought to the millions of India was an amazing one. We in India, as in many other countries of Asia and Africa, are trying to develop ourselves so as to put an end to our poverty and to raise hundreds of millions of our people to better standards of living, ultimately aiming at the good life for all. This cannot be done, we think, without the help of science and modern techniques. The problem before us is whether in adopting the methods of techniques of science, which we must, we might not create a society full of internal conflict and the urge for power which brings it into conflict with other groups. Can we succeed in bringing about a synthesis of modern science and something of the spiritual background which has enabled life, which has ennobled life throughout the ages? Without science and modern technology, we cannot better our lot or indeed maintain our freedom. But without a spiritual background also, the minds of men turn into wrong directions and conflicts occur, resulting in great destruction and the degradation of man. The UNESCO has set the right ideal before it to try to turn the minds of men, and the way it is trying to do so is not the direct method of facing our many problems and conflicts, but the indirect way of creating appreciation and understanding of each other and of art and culture. Probably this is a surer method of dealing with these basic problems than the direct political method, though of course both methods have to be tried. In any event, it is of the highest importance that the purposes and objectives of UNESCO should be remembered, and we should always remember also that wars and conflicts begin in the minds of men, and peace therefore has to be established there. In the measure that UNESCO succeeds in this high endeavor, will it help in the establishment of a durable peace and rid humanity of the danger of war and all the fears that encompass it. I would like to thank you again, Mr. Director General, and the distinguished delegates of this assembly for the honor they have done me in inviting me to address you today and to be inspired by your presence of this great organization and the work it is doing throughout the world. I thank you, sir.
Now, if you like, I will show you around the building and then to the